Let's shift gears completely, something totally different from Islam, not even close in the way it appears. Let's go to Hinduism. Now, with Hinduism, we go much older. Where Islam was 6 centuries after the time of Christ, Hinduism is at least 1,500 years before the time of Christ. I'll use approximately that 1,500 because that's going to put it back to where you have something that can be identified as sounding a lot like what we think of when we think of Hinduism. And so a lot of people will use a date somewhere around there. They'll vary on what date they use. That's also about the same time period we're going to get someone like a Moses who is writing and giving the rules for Judaism. So we're talking about roughly the same ballpark. Now, some will go even older than that, because before, what happened back in the 1500s BC was something that is the precursor to Hinduism, and some will just simply run the date back even further yet. Wherever you want to put the starting date, Hinduism is old. It's very old. And the scriptures, it has several scripture texts. Those scripture texts are quite old as the writings of Moses, sometimes even older. So, with Hinduism, what do we have here? What's the key? First, it starts there in India, and then it spreads further east yet. Takes over China, Japan, other places, but it starts there in India. Now, the key to Hinduism is polytheism. Polytheism is really the big, impressive thing, and then after that, you've got some other teachings that go with that. Now, notice already how that's so different from Islam. Islam was one God, and against polytheism. There's just one God, period. This is the total opposite. Now, in polytheism of Hinduism, there is a large number of gods, but there are 3 at the top, the 3 biggies, the supreme triad. You got Brahma, and you got Vishnu, and you got Shiva. Now Brahma, he's identified as the creative force. He's the creator of things. He brings things into existence and gives life. And then you got Vishnu. Vishnu is a preserver. That is, he keeps things going, but he's the one that would come in and rescue and deliver if that were needed. Then you got Shiva. Shiva's the destroyer. You don't want to be on the bad side of Shiva, because he'll come after you. So it captures 3 different aspects of what you and I would think of our one God, Jehovah God, but this is spread into 3. Now, just a little bit more on Vishnu, just for your interest. Vishnu, all 3 of these gods have their stories, legends about what they did and what they do and this and that. But with Vishnu, the legend is that he has 10 incarnations on earth in some kind of fleshly form. So 10 times comes to earth, lives in some kind of form, sometimes animal, sometimes human, but has a mission to accomplish, each time a different mission, and then ascends back to the heavenly quarters where deity lives, but then sometimes later will come. Now, in the legend of Vishnu, he's come 9 times, and now they're waiting for number 10. That's the future hope they have, is he's coming back one more time. There's names for all the incarnations. I just thought you might want to know about number 7 and number 8. Because number 7, number 8, we get into names you'll recognize, like Rama and Krishna. You've heard the name Krishna, like as in Hare Krishna. Or, for example, if you were back as old as I am, 60s, 70s, you listen to George Harrison music. Almost every album of George Harrison, since he was into Hinduism, one of the versions, he would mix at least 1 or more songs, and he'd throw in some of these names at you. So if you grew up singing My Sweet Lord, you thought that was a Christian song. He wasn't singing about Christ, My Sweet Lord. And when you get to the end, the chorus, where he throws in all these names, he'll throw in Krishna and this and that. And that's the names that are part of the Vishnu incarnations, as well as some of the other names of Hinduism. Now, Hinduism claims there are millions of gods. I remember when I was a kid and I'd hear a missionary from India, or maybe one of the evangelists from India. He's Indian himself, and he comes over to the United States and tells about what he's doing. And when they talk about millions, I figured they were just exaggerating. Makes India sound like really a mission field when you got that many gods. No, actually, that's what they claim, millions of gods. I mean, they got gods of all sorts. They don't even try to put names on all of them. There's so many. Now, that leads then to what you'll see if you've ever traveled in India. I've been there several times. Get outside the big cities. Leave Mumbai, leave Bangalore, for example. Get out into the other cities, and especially out in the rural towns and such as that, and boy, you'll be impressed. Because they have idols and images of deities everywhere. They got pictures pasted everywhere, and statues and this and that. They got shrines everywhere. One here, one here, one here. They're all right next to each other, little shrines and bigger temples. And the stuff is everywhere. This is about as idolatrous as you'll ever see in any culture is what they'll do with Hinduism in some of the localities of India, as well as other countries where it's spread. And so it's huge. Now, this is where you'll see a radical difference between the way Hinduism approaches God and the way we would approach God. Because we focus on the one God, and then we got the rules, don't do the graven image such that, but this is the kind of thing they love as they lay the gods out in all of these pictures and images and so on. So the polytheism, that's a key to understanding Hinduism. Now there's more. For example, there's karma. Most of us have heard that. We know something about it. Karma is where whatever you do is going to come back on you someday. And so in Christian terminology, we talk about you reap what you sow. And when Paul uses that expression, for example, in Galatians chapter 6, he's actually borrowing what's an expression been around for some time. You reap what you sow. What you put in is what comes back out. That's an old idea. A lot of different religions teach it. But Hinduism is famous for what they do with it. Because this karma idea is particularly focused on the bad you do is going to come back one of these days, and not necessarily in this life. It may be in another life. Which leads to the idea of transmigration, sometimes transmigration of the soul. Now, you and I sometimes refer to reincarnation. That's what we like to call it. We assume that's what they call it as well. Not exactly. The word incarnation oftentimes carries the connotation of a deity who becomes flesh, and this is not about deity becoming flesh. This is about me and you, humans, who transmigrate. That is, our soul moves from one body to another body, from one life to another life, and we just keep coming back with more lives, more lives, more lives. That's why they prefer to call it transmigration of the soul, but it's the many lives that you live. Now, the way it works is that whatever you do in one life, your karma comes back on you in how you show up in the next life. Maybe you were good in this life, so you come back as a better person as far as your state in life than what you were last time. Maybe you come out much less because of how bad you were, but you'll keep working through this cycle of lives until you finally escape. And that's as close as they have to a doctrine of salvation, is if you can escape the cycle of lives, that will be your salvation. Get out of this circle that goes round and round and round. So that's what they seek. Try to escape from this. Now, there's an expression that's used. That expression came from Hinduism, and then back in the 60s and 70s, when some Christian groups on the fringe mixed Eastern religion with Christianity and started using some of their buzz phrases and this and that, this thing showed up again. It's the phrase, Atman is Brahman. Now, Atman is the word for you, the person, and your soul, yourself, your self-identity. That is, every one of us has a self-identity. Here's me, and there's all the rest of you. And I'm distinct from you. You're you, and I am me, this individual. And it's a very individualistic, self-awareness kind of concept. Atma, that's me. Now, Brahman, and this is with an N on the end. Brahma was the god, the masculine god, but this is Brahman. And this refers to the ultimate universal soul. All living things united as one thing, if you will. That's as close as they come to some kind of ultimate God, even greater than those millions of gods. This is something even above that, Brahman, this ultimate oneness of everything that is and that lives. And if you can leave being this individual, me versus that, and ever become part of this universal oneness, you have finally arrived and you've escaped the cycle of lives. And folks, I have a hard time wrapping my mind around that. I can repeat it. I can say it to you. I'm not sure I quite get it. That's okay. If you don't get it either, you're with me. But this is what they're seeking. This is what you want. You want to get out of this cycle and move on to something that's not part of the cycle. This is where the word nirvana comes into play. Nirvana comes from Hinduism. And nirvana, we always think of it, so is that their heaven or something? Not really. I describe it as a passionless peace. I borrowed that from their expression. Passionless, that is non-emotion, if you will, but peace. Sometimes we think everybody's trying to get to some kind of heaven experience where I'm happy and joyful and life is good. And in Hinduism, no, that's not really our goal. Our goal is to get out of all of this. It's not so much to be happy. It's not so much to be joyful. It's to get out of this. So it's a passionless peace from all of this. Now, whatever that feels like, I'm not sure they're into defining it. It's that oneness with all, but I'm not sure they're into defining what that is. But it's not really our terminology of peace and joy and fulfillment. It's something else. But something along those lines is their nirvana that they're seeking. Now, also with Hinduism, they're famous for the concept of Maya, which you'll also find in other Eastern religions as well. Maya is the word for illusion. All of reality, all of life, this world that we see is illusion. It's not real. Oh, it's real enough. You're living in it and you're dealing with it. But the real reality is that Brahman thing, that oneness thing that ties everything together. That's the true reality. This is what you're putting up with right now till you escape it. So all is Maya. All is illusion. This is not the real. Now, a part of that is an idea, this old Hindu idea, and that is, we think about this universe, this world, they recognize there could be a whole bunch of worlds out there. This may not be the only one. And the fact is that when you come back for another life, you may not get dropped in this one, you might get dropped in one of those others. So get ready. Because there could be any number of worlds, but there's only one reality, because all of those worlds are just illusion. There's only one that's actually real. And that's the Maya concept. One last thought on Hinduism, because a lot of what I describe sounds very philosophical, it's often referred to, or theological if you want to use that term. It's heady stuff. It's what the guys in the know of the scriptures and the teachings would know. But you know what? I travel to India. Your typical Hindu out in the villages, working in the fields, doing this, doing that, may not be into all of that kind of stuff I just said. May not could even explain it to you. You know, the typical Hindu, if you really want to catch the essence of what Hinduism for him, it'd be the polytheism. It'd be all those gods and the idols and the statues and the shrines. I tell you, it's the caste system. It's that as you come back into your next life, you are put in a state where you deserve to be because of your karma, and whatever caste you're put in, that's what you're stuck with till the day you die. So make the most of that caste. And maybe when you come back, you'll get a better one. And the caste system becomes an important part of Hinduism. And so they've got it broken down into the different levels. They've got the rules about marrying outside of your caste. That's not supposed to be done. Or trying to be better than your caste, trying to pretend you're something when you're not. That's not supposed to be done. You see, this is what karma gave you. Now, deal with it. Make the most of it. Maybe you'll come back in a higher caste, a better life. And so the caste system is what the average guy knows. Because he sees where he's been born, he sees his parents, he sees his life, and he's a field worker, he's a this, he's a that, and that's your caste, and now that's about as good as it's ever going to get for you. Think about that when our missionaries deal with Hindus that they bring into Christianity, how much baggage they got to get them to let go of. And there's a lot of things they gladly let go of. Boy, I'm glad to be out of that, but I tell you, some things are hard to let go of. Like, for example, it's time to marry. And so two Christians would like to marry, but you got two families that may not be Christian. But these two Christians who now the caste system is gone for them, but their families don't see it as gone. And they're not liking this union at all for a number of reasons. There's just a lot of issues that are baggage that you carry with you even as you come into Christianity, and they just simply have to be dealt with. Oh, there's a lot more we can tell you about them. When all said and done, here's our top two of the world religions. We've got Islam, definitely up there as one that has grown significantly just from the 6th century to the present, which means potential is they're going to keep right on growing, get larger and larger. That's why we have the concerns that one day they catch up with Christianity or surpass us in numbers. And then you got Hinduism, which has been around for so long, we're pretty much seeing their numbers, because right now their numbers are not so much by evangelism or conversion, it's just by birth, and so that will go whatever direction birth rates go in the countries of the world. But here's your two major religions, totally opposite from one another. Monotheism and a vast polytheism of millions of gods, plus the other ideas as well that separate them. And yet both of them not only the same with each other, but significantly different from us and our Christian teachings. Quite a bit different from what you and I would teach. And thus we set up our teaching, our evangelism, to try to show, not the things we have in common, we've got a few, but really to show the things we have that are different, the things that Christianity offers you, that will be a vast improvement on some of the things that you bought into.